The Talking Cheeseheads on cheeseheadtalk.com.
Well, Clay Matthews and the Packers agreed to a deal to see the surprise and shock of no one yesterday, but it is good news. Clay Matthews, about 5 years, $66 million. He is temporarily the highest paid Packer in Green Bay, soon to be, we think, circumvented by Aaron Rodgers, who appears to be, just a couple million apart with the Packers on his either $21 or $25 million deal, whatever we're going to arrive at here. But Matthews signs, as you heard, he says he's going to be the same old Clay, always going with the huge motor, always trying to, make plays for the Packers defense. The question I would have for you, Justin, I know it's been a lot of chatter about the fact that Matthews and Rodgers are probably now going to make up about 1/3 of the Packers' expenses and salary due to the salary cap. And, Packer Nation, it's not like you have any choice. You got to re-sign these guys. You have to. They're franchise players. They're cornerstones. You build your team around. There's no question about it. Rodgers certainly a Hall of Famer. Matthews definitely playing his way toward the Hall of Fame. So it's a smart decision, all risks involved with injuries and stuff. But are you worried about their ability to now, going forward, sign or keep other players to make this team a contender for the Super Bowl consistently?
I think you definitely have to be, and you mentioned it right there, but the concern, it comes with the territory. When you have a superstar in Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, when you have a superstar in Clay Matthews, and I'm not just talking about on the field, these guys are superstars around the National Football League. I would argue to say two of the top 10, maybe top 15 most recognizable faces and names in football. So when you have that, you have to keep them around. What choice does Green Bay have in the contrary? And does it affect them? I really think it does. And you've already seen the effects of it, whether you realize it or not. When I say seen the effects of it, I'm talking about Cullen Jenkins going 2 years ago. I'm talking about Scott Wells going last year and Greg Jennings going this year. This is all into effect of what's going on right now. And for years, Packers need to sign free agents. They need to sign free agents. Well, Thompson's about building from within, and he's always looking down the road, and I think he saw this moment. I think he saw this coming up where these two guys were going to have to give the big deal. And you know what? You could probably throw B.J. Raji in there. Those three might be 40% of the Packers' salary cap. So it is going to affect it, but I think Thompson's the right guy to have in place and knows what he's doing. He likes to build from the draft. He likes to keep new guys coming in, try to find those diamonds in the rough. That's the way he goes about it. So I don't think it's going to be any different. I just think, the Packers are going to be up against the cap every year, and creativity-wise, there won't be a lot of margin for error.
Well, you have now. You had the strategy a couple of years ago where they did make the run to the Super Bowl, and it's not just the fact that they won the Super Bowl. It's the fact that they've had one of the best, if not the best, you probably know better than me, about regular season record or overall record in the NFL the last 3 years. They win the Super Bowl as either the youngest or the second youngest team in the league, and that's going to have to continue now because you're going to grow old with Rodgers and Clay Matthews and maybe B.J. Raji, but you're going to have to continue, opposite all those guys now. This is going to be a completely different team 6 years from now, I would imagine, 5-6 years from now, as far as the length of these contracts. Because they just, you're going to have to let guys go, like a Greg Jennings. You're going to have to, unfortunately, do that. But it's a draft and develop team. And in the NFL these days, not such a bad strategy. One, barring an injury to Matthews or Rodgers, you're not going to waste any money the way other teams have great big salary cap, wasted money still sitting on the books for players that have been, long since gone, bad signings. So that's good. But you're going to have to continue to go toward your strength and draft and develop players, and you're going to have to continue as a Packer fan to be incredibly frustrated when free agency hits. Just wait for the draft because nothing's happening.
The other thing to that, Ben, is, and you bring it up with Aaron Rodgers and Clay Matthews, more Rodgers, I think, in this one, but the NFL's proven all you need to do is get to the playoffs. You don't need to go 15-1. You need to go 13-3. The Saints and the Colts 2 years ago, they were the two number one seeds. That was the first time, I think, since 1991 that the top team in each conference, played there. And speaking of the Packers' success and anybody that doubts Ted Thompson, I'll say 25% hitting on winning Super Bowls for times you make the playoffs is pretty good. Green Bay's made the last 4 seasons. Baltimore was the last 5. Those are the longest streaks like that in the National Football League. So obviously, they are doing something right. And I think that is the focus. I really do. I think that they understand that if you get to the postseason, if you get hot at the right time, if you're playing your best football, then anything can happen. And, if you're getting to the postseason, season with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, I think one out of every few years you might be able to put it together and give it a good run. I love this comparison. You know what it reminds me of? The Green Bay Packers after their 2 Super Bowls under Ron Wolf, when everybody started signing contracts everywhere else because guys were tied up. Favre took a lot of money, got a big deal. Very, very similar to that. Now, here's the biggest difference. Today's NFL is much different than that. You don't have the dynasties. You don't have the same teams winning it each and every year, and even though it's cycled through. Now you go to the NFL playoffs, and there's probably about 9 or 10 teams that lace it up in the playoffs that have a legit shot of making the Super Bowl.
The other big difference is Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw away playoff games. Wham! Zing!
That was a good one, yeah.
It was really good. The thing I wonder as we take a look at the contract signing and Clay Matthews getting the $20.5 million signing bonus, and the Packers able to spread that out. My thought was, how do you make Clay Matthews the most effective, bang for the buck? I mean, the guy clearly on the field as far as his style of play, whether he's had the numbers or not, I think people who watch film, who I trust, maybe Ron Jaworski or some guy at NFL Films, will tell me that he's gotten better every year. He keeps getting better skill-wise. Now, defenses or offenses, of course, are accounting for him, which is why maybe he, statistically speaking, still has been fine, but hasn't had a dominant year, since the Super Bowl year? I can't even remember, because he's always moving around. The Packers need to get and develop, and they're trying to do that, I know, with the likes of Nick Perry and maybe Jarrell Worthy, but they need to develop opposite threats, maybe 2 or 3 more that can actually make, offenses have to account for you. That's easier said than done, of course, but to make this thing really maximize defensively, they got to get guys who are going to be able to rush the passer like they had with Cullen Jenkins when they were so effective a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, look at what they did last year in the draft. They went out and drafted 2 linebackers, Terrell Manning and Nick Perry. Perry got hurt. Manning was ineffective. You got 2 defensive linemen, Mike Daniels and Terrell Worthy. Worthy got hurt, and Daniels, I think, could be a diamond in the rough. I like his mentality. Kind of has that screw loose type of thing that I think Green Bay needs. Exactly. Yeah, it's all that corn. He's got all the the mental makeup. I think you don't see in Green Bay, but that's what they've been trying to do. I think the biggest difference is Thompson hasn't he hasn't hit. He didn't hit with Nick Perry. He didn't hit with Jarrell Worthy yet. He might end up hitting. It's not like he had the B.J. Raji and Clay Matthews guys that made impacts, very, very quickly throughout their tenure. So that's what that's really what it's about. But, I mean, you look at Matthews' numbers, 42.5 sacks. That's 5th over the NFL since he came into the league. That's 5th in Green Bay Packer history, only Packer ever to make 4 Pro Bowls right out of the chute. So, I mean, there's the accolades that are there. There's everything that is. But, defense, there's 11 guys on a side of a football. And defensively, you need to shore up things at the safety spot. You need to get some better play on the defensive line. If Matthews is going to be able to not just continue at the pace he's in, because I think he will, but grow, get better, and put up numbers that I guess justify being the highest paid linebacker in football.
Yeah, at least for now, because somebody will come along and beat that next year. But I agree with you, and I think that's the big challenge here. And Packer fans, and me included, we get a little annoyed with the way free agency goes, like I mentioned before, and Ted Thompson, and you think, God, you got to improve this defense because that's what got absolutely smoked against the read option last year and all that stuff. True, but remember that it takes players, even good players on average, 2 or 3 years to develop after the draft, and those guys pretty much all made an impact last year in the secondary, at the linebacker spot. There were some injuries, but even on the defensive line, Mike Daniels had some good plays last year, as did Jarrell Worthy from time to time. So, I'm really excited to see how the second year, the leap for all those guys he drafted last year, factors in this year. And I know we're going to talk about the draft a lot, of course, this week, but the thing I'm looking for is not necessarily, they have to have defensive help with the first round, even if he keeps that pick. I mean, knowing Ted Thompson, I'm willing to bet he trades out of it. But overall with the draft, I think you're back to best available this year. No matter what, you just take your best available player, whether it's offense or defense, because, you're counting on those guys to still develop that you drafted last year and the year before on the defensive side.
I agree with you, Ben, because you look at some of the positions they've gone, but I think there's one position where if they can get somebody there that they like, they have to. That's the safety spot. I go back 2 years ago, when they won the Super Bowl, they were getting to the quarterback, and everyone's like, oh, it was because of Cullen Jenkins. I'm not necessarily still sure of that, because if Cullen Jenkins was hurt the second half of that year, he missed 6 games, they still got to the quarterback. The first 2 games in 2011, whatever it was, when they played the Saints in Carolina, they had 9 sacks the first 2 games. They ended the year with 27 when Nick Collins got hurt. Safety. Once he went, that's when things really changed. I think that's when Dom Capers started dialing it back and changing things up and trying to add some help to the back. But I think that's the one position there that if somebody's there, I was going over the list right here. I'm not off the top of my head. I actually was Eric Reed from LSU, Matt Elam of Florida, although he's a little bit smaller. You got the kid from Florida International, TJ McDonald, 6'2", 219-pound, kind of a screw-loose guy in the secondary. Those could be some of the guys you look at there if you're Thompson. But I think safety's the one spot that you can get away from your best player available and get some instantaneous help. But and by the way, running backs don't play defense, so please get running back out of your mind when it comes to Green Bay needing one. Marshawn Lynch wouldn't have played linebacker the last 2 years. They would have the same Justin, trouble they had.
He would have eaten the clock up, baby, because Mike McCarthy would have given him the ball 25 times a game.
Well, no, 30 times. And of course, the Packers would have been able to give him that 6-year, $31 million contract extension he got after the year he went to Seattle and Green Bay won the Super Bowl with James Starks as their featured back. So get over the running back thing. You got Aaron Rodgers. You don't need to run the football.
I know. I still would like to see him go get a kid, though, that can at least, like Cedric Benson was doing to start the season. No, come on, seriously, fall forward. DeJuan Harris has got some juke and some jive, but I want him to get a yard. That's the one thing I want. I want him to get a yard on third down when everybody knows they're going to run the football. They haven't done that since I'm on green.
Would you rather see them get a yard running the football, or the defense or the offense of the other team lose a yard when running the football?
How about both? Can I have both? Please?
No, you can't have both. You get one or the other.
All right.
It's hot dogs or it's macaroni.
You're right.
Your choice.
With Aaron Rodgers, yes, I'd like to see the other team lose a yard. And to your point, by the way, about the safety and Nick Collins, that's a great point that I think a lot of Packer fans don't realize is, it absolutely sucked losing him for him and for the team because he was such a great player. And I think that position does need to be shored up a little bit. And again, you hope that, something opposite Morgan Burnett as far as maybe a playmaking safety to, complement Mr. Steady back there. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. The one last pressing question I have that I'm really excited, maybe more than anything else, to see develop in Green Bay now over the next 6 to however many years, because Aaron Rodgers' contract extension is also fairly imminent here, is the acting war. My wife records this the Mindy Project show on Fox every week. It's with the Indian chick from The Office. She's pretty funny. What's her name? I forgot her name.
Mindy?
Anyway, it's funny. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, Mindy, I guess. out of the blue. It is, okay. I don't know her last name. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, last week, I'm watching, and Clay Matthews makes a cameo on the show before even, saying his name. And I exclaim in the living room, "Is that Clay Matthews?" And my wife, of course, who knows nothing about football or sports, says, "Who?" I say he's a Packer. And, he's a little stiff, but he gave a decent performance. And, that Fathead commercial, if you've seen it, I think it's really good with Clay Matthews. I think it's probably even better than Aaron Rodgers, State Farm, or Associated Bank commercials. So I sense a rivalry here. Northern Cal, SoCal, Rodgers, Matthews, acting over the next 6 years. I'm looking forward to that. I think that could be just as entertaining as what we see on the field.
When Entourage, the movie, comes out, the Packer that gets the role in that will take the cake without question, because once you get on Entourage, that's when you arrived. All these other things are just meaningless. Entourage. It's all about Digger Phelps. Entourage.
Yeah, Digger Phelps.
I got a highlighter all of a sudden. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Yes, and it's pink. What gives?
It does not match my tie.
Yeah, okay. Got it. We're the Talking Cheese Heads, Ben and Justin Dake. We're going to talk about the Brewers next, and Kyle Losh. We'll talk about him next.
Real Wisconsin sports talk from real Wisconsin cheeseheads. The Talking Cheeseheads on cheeseheadtalk.com.